Hello, siblings, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Sibyl podcast. I'd like to start off by just expressing a huge appreciation to everyone who's voted for us for the APVA Award. And I mean, it was just amazing, the outpour of love and dedication from the community. Can't thank you guys enough. Well, for this week's episode, I just wanted to say that we have an exciting episode for you. In our previous conversation with the talented and resilient Farah, we explored her childhood experiences and the challenges she's faced with her parents' divorce, and also her divorce from her first marriage. If you missed it, make sure to go back and catch up. Farah's story is truly captivating. During our conversation, we also discovered that her journey extends far beyond her childhood. She generously shared her experiences of love, vulnerability, and strength in her current blended marriage. We discussed the complexity of merging families, co-parenting, and creating a harmonious environment for everyone involved. But that's not all. Farah and her husband, Tony, have had their fair share of challenges. Tony's military career brought its own set of hurdles, including long separations and constant uncertainty. Despite the distance, they were able to find ways to nurture their relationship and support each other through thick and thin. In this concluding episode, we will also delve into the painful realities of divorce and heart-wrenching experience of being estranged from one's children. Tony's resilience and determination shines through as he shared how he coped with these difficult moments and also reviewed his family bonds. So join us as we continue Farah's and Tony's extraordinary journey, exploring themes of love, vulnerability, blended families, military careers, painful divorce, and the unwavering commitment to reconnect with their family. I hope that their authenticity, why is that word so hard to say? And wisdom will inspire and uplift you. So without further ado, let's jump back into our conversation with Farah and Tony and keep uncovering the layers of their remarkable story and everything in between.
What haven't we talked about? I think we've talked about almost
We've talked about a lot.
Yeah. Yes. How do you feel?
And it's not about me. And
yes. No, I know. But how do you feel? Let me check in with you. How do you feel so far?
I feel good.
Right? Okay. I know before we did this, we were a little bit apprehensive.
A little bit?
I didn't want to say, the whole length of it. But how do you, is your apprehension still there or it's kind of melted?
I knew once we got into
it. Yeah. It was just,
I'm always comfortable around you.
Oh, thank you.
And
thank you.
You are very hospitable. And people feel. No, I'm
get very awkward. Let's focus. All right,
you make people feel safe.
Oh, thank you.
You do. And
thank you.
It has been.
Maybe we should bring Tony in. Maybe you can. Are there some things you like to say about your wife?
Oh gosh.
Sure. Yeah, come on in. The reason I crowd, we can.
Yeah.
So we're bringing in Mr. Stout.
He's got to take the glasses off the top of his head because he knows that I'll say something. I'll be like,
don't give him a hard time, Farah. Yeah, you can smell. There's so much space. Oh, you just want to. All right.
We're having a moment.
We're having a moment. You guys have to forgive us.
All right, take it. It
is a love seat.
Oh, literally.
Literally. So.
How's it been being married to Farah?
Probably my greatest adventure. Really has. Probably. It has been. Well, I just wasn't. I didn't anticipate that question. So. Yeah. And if I really sat down and thought about it, I would have to say it is my greatest adventure because this has been the constant that has lasted the longest in my life.
Yeah.
So it's been a great adventure, and you never know. It's kind of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Except she doesn't eat it anymore, so she doesn't know what she's going to get.
Don't. She does now. She eats chocolate now.
Okay.
But it's not like she has chocolate laying around the house that she's going after.
Yeah.
Like we have chocolate in the house constantly.
Yeah.
We don't. That's not her. Yeah. Her guilty pleasure is jelly beans.
Oh really?
No.
Is it gummy bear?
Clarify.
Which one?
Not jelly beans.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jelly bellies.
Jelly belly.
They're different?
Jelly beans.
They are.
Yeah, that's them right there.
That too. Is that where she learned it from? It's okay. It's grandma's house. You can spoil her.
That's right.
So how are jelly bellies different from jelly beans?
Just the flavors.
And
they're
it's not just the flavors. Like even the inside is a different texture.
I'm sorry. This is my time. This is my time, not yours. This is about me now, not you.
So jelly bellies. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So one of the few times I met you, whenever I met you the first time, there was something I thought was strikingly different about you. You're so in tune with your emotions, and you're not afraid to express even like the vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Was that something was that how you've always been, or what made it that for you?
My kids, I think. Because early on in our marriage, I was very, and I hate to use the word stoic, but I was very, my emotions stayed in. Mm-hmm. And I think that was just something that, being the youngest in our family, and,
the youngest of 4. Well, actually more, because we grew up in a blended family.
Mm-hmm. But I just wasn't, it wasn't easy for me to show my emotions. Mm. It wasn't easy for me to cry. My goodness, I don't even remember when the first time I really let out my emotion. But there was, it would just have to be my kids. And when I say my kids, I mean all of my kids.
Of course.
So, I think that's probably what brought it out of me. Just knowing that God has entrusted me with their care, and that I have to be the best male figure for them. So yeah.
What was the hardest part being in a blended marriage for you? Because you inherited a bonus daughter as well.
The hardest part, probably just the. I think it was the communication between Farah and I, and what we wanted as far as the discipline in the home, and the discipline not only of my daughter coming into the marriage, but also her daughter as well. It was really difficult because she had Mackenzie, when we got married, Mackenzie had been sleeping in the bed with her. And my thing was no kids in the bed. No kids in the bed. There.
No.
Oh, absolutely. Now, before we got married, I had a Labrador. Her name was Sibyl.
She was on your bed,
and she slept on my bed.
So
So when I was separated from my first wife, before that, no.
Okay,
I would not let her.
Companion dog,
yeah, but I had her for
the story the other day. I was like, "It's your dog."
You made him give away the dog.
No, didn't make me give away the dog. Okay. I gave the dog away because we didn't have a place for her at the house, and I didn't want her to be a 100% inside dog.
Okay.
It's kind of like the dog.
You said it was me or the dog.
In the bed?
It's me or the dog, period. Like, the dog is not in the house. You're like, I don't want it to be a 100% inside dog. And I'm like, it ain't going to be. Like, we're not
having. It's funny how she remembers the story differently than you remember the story, because I heard a version.
Yeah, some of the stories she's been saying, I'm like, not exactly how I remember.
Which ones you want to retract? About how you guys met, right? Or
no. How we met was it was at church. We met in the mall. Mm-hmm. Had never thought anything about it when she was, and actually, so she had just had Mackenzie, but my ex-wife was still pregnant at the time. So that's the way I remember it.
Then because you said you had your 2 babies together. Okay. Because she said the babies were together at the mall.
I just remember looking at her baby and seeing all the hair
Oh,
I was like,
Mackenzie had a lot.
I remember looking at Mackenzie and thinking, oh my goodness, why would she put a wig on the baby? But Mackenzie had so much hair when she was born.
Wow.
Just go back and look at the baby pictures. And it was, I mean, of course, I really don't have a whole lot of room to talk about hair, but Mackenzie's had more hair than me since day one. So
yeah.
And that is the honest truth.
Yeah.
So it's, and then, she was right about the phone conversations, and there were times that phone conversations, we'd wake up in the morning and we were still on the phone.
Wow.
We'd just fallen asleep on the phone.
That would be annoying if I was trying to reach either one of you. I'll be so annoyed.
But I mean, there was a couple things, nothing major, nothing that really stands out that, oh no, you're the first one to ask me to marry you. I did. I asked her to marry me. She's like, no, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, well, when you're ready to marry me, you let me know and we'll get married.
Oh.
And I don't know. Did you say how quick it was that we got married after
June.
you told me?
She said June. You went after.
No. Yeah. So I came home on Friday.
Yeah.
And we were married on the following Tuesday.
Baba.
She told me. So I came home on Friday.
On Saturday night, I shot a wedding and I was working at Big Jake's, and then I drove down.
Okay, so Saturday night.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's even. I'm a bit worse, isn't it? So she tells me.
Sunday we went to a water park.
Yeah. And then Monday, I was still off of work, and so we went down and got the marriage license and lined out the justice of the peace.
Yeah.
And then and the venue where we were going, and I say venue because we didn't know who owned the house.
It wasn't a venue.
No, let me finish. Yeah, let me explain what this is. So we had a friend that was and it was more her friend because she knew the guy, and I was just getting to know him.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was a couple.
Yeah, well, they had a friend that lived they lived in a little bit better area in Fort Smith. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, they've got a pool.
Hills.
Yeah.
It would be like the Nichols Hills.
Oh, like
Yeah.
And so, and they had a pool in their backyard, and they're like, oh, you guys could go and, you could have the wedding by the backyard, in the backyard by the pool and all that. And we're like, hey, cool. When we're done, we'll take the plunge. And it was, it was a joke. But yeah, so we did. And that Monday we got everything lined out.
But
and then
they
Tuesday,
heard that story and they contacted a news reporter and had a news reporter there to take pictures of us taking the plunge.
Oh, I'll tell you what.
So after
we literally jumped in the water.
Like, aren't you going to, we weren't planning to, but they're like, aren't you going to take the plunge? Like, aren't you going to jump into the water? And we're like,
this was June, so it was kind of...
It was warm.
July. It was
July 1st.
Yeah, not bad.
1997.
Yeah, not bad.
So we took the plunge, but then my daughter was with her dad, and so I was like,
oh,
please don't post.
We're like,
don't put it in the paper.
Yeah.
I called a friend and said, can you have them not run that paper?
Yeah. Did they ever run it?
They didn't. No.
Okay. So, I imagine that for you, Tony, like, whenever you guys went for those conferences for blended families and you keep hearing about the statistics about, for example, 85% of second marriages don't work, and then your mom in the beginning stage of it as a way to protect you saying, this is not going to last. What did you how did you come out just, 25 years strong? Because you guys are actually beating the odds in even if it's for a second marriage, definitely. Mm. First marriage, definitely, because not everybody stays together for that long. Yeah. How much more second marriage? Were there some moments of like shaky faith, or what would you say has been the foundation of your relationship?
Our faith.
Yeah.
I think our faith is the number one. But
after that,
I'm going to have to say that it was, after we got married, we just said, look, there is no exit sign. None. It doesn't matter what happens in our marriage. We're in this for the long haul.
And he's always said, if you leave, you better be ready because I'm coming with you.
I am. I'm not, I'm not gonna, this right here means more to me than anything. I'll walk away from anybody, anything, anywhere to follow her, to go with her. And I know she would do the same thing for me. I don't want it to sound like she drives the relationship and I'm the little puppy dog trailing along, but if she was to pack her bags, but if she packs her bags and walks away, I'm coming with her. I'll find her.
But I'm really impressed that you didn't say what you always say.
What's that? Remind him.
What's the glue?
Oh, the glue that that keeps us together is sex.
Oh.
So
that is a needed ingredient. Yeah.
So no, I mean and so we have and that's the truth. It's we are very affectionate people. Yeah. We are very
but we've been
what's that?
Expressive with your love. You're very
yeah. And that's I don't have a problem patting her on the rear end in public. So and she has a problem with me.
Yeah.
But she is but here's the deal. That is what makes us who we are. And that is what makes us almost 26 years strong.
Well, that's a part of
we've had we've had some issues, we've had some fights, we've had some arguments.
Of course, like marriage.
But anytime you put two people together from completely different ends of the spectrums, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was new in my faith when I met her. She saw me get baptized. She's been with me when I first spoke in tongues. She has she's been with me for pretty much all of my faith. When I walked into church that very first time, that was when I gave my heart to the Lord. I sat on the back, on the very back pew because that kind of back up a little bit. And so this is a funny story kind of about the Assemblies of God thing. So, when my first wife left me, I didn't eat, and I lost so much weight so fast. And my neighbors, they came over and they were just like, "Hey, why don't you come over for dinner tonight? What's your favorite food?" I'm like, I really don't want to eat. And they're like, no, you need to eat. Yeah. And so they made me some, at that point in time, I really had a craving for broccoli cheese soup.
Okay.
So they made me broccoli cheese soup. I came over that night and I had about a half of a cup just because my stomach had shrunk so much. And we talked and they're like, why don't you come to church with us in the morning? And I'm like, okay, where do you go to church? And they're like, well, we go down to Alma First Assembly of God. And I mean, immediately it's my radar pops up and I'm like, oh, red flags, right?
He was raised Catholic.
Because I was raised Catholic. And I'm like, and their first response, because they saw me just kind of like, their first response to me is like, look, we don't drink strychnine and we don't play with serpents. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so they were, and so we talked a little bit and they're like, look, we believe in the Bible. We believe in the Bible from the front to the back. Every bit of the Bible we believe to be the God inspired truth. And so I'm like, okay, what time do I need to be here? Well, we have Sunday school. I think Sunday school was like 9 or something like that, 8:30 or 9. And so I said, okay, I'll meet you there. I'll be there. And I did. But
it's still at the back because in case you wanted to.
Well, I don't think I went to Sunday school that morning. I just met them for church. And I walked in the back door and I was like, I'm sitting on the back pew. And that was always a joke amongst our family growing up. And it may still be a joke amongst Catholic families. But always get the back seat because that's the best seat in the house. And because you can be the first one out the door going to dinner, right?
Just in case.
And so I sat in the back and I just remember sitting back there and Pastor Summers just kept talking. And I don't remember what he preached on, but before I even went forward to the altar, I mean, it was probably 10 minutes into the service. I'd already given my heart to the Lord. I was like, this is what I've been searching for. This is going to fill the hole in my heart. And it did. And it's, here I am. I'm 26 years later. So a little more than 26 years. So yeah. And so
sweet.
But yeah, anyway, with that being said, that was the funny story about the strychnine and the serpents. So
you don't want to be swallowing swords and, casting out.
No.
Where's your faith, Tony?
That's not playing with snakes, that's for sure.
I think finally will be, what are some traits of Farah that you adore so much and you like to highlight? Because I know she's not somebody to talk about herself, right? What are some, great things about her that you like for us to know?
Oh, I don't know where to start. She's a great mom. She's a great wife. She's a great friend.
What makes me a great mom?
Well, just the way you take care of your kids. When your kids are in need, you will drop what you are doing. Doesn't matter what it is, you'll drop, and your kids come first, and you will take care of them. I'm not saying that you're gonna. You inspire them to be better. You challenge them to be better. Even to this day, now that we've got all adult kids and we've had to make that transition to parenting adult kids, which we are no longer their
number one go-to person.
No, we're no longer their disciplinarian. We're no longer but now we are their counsel. And so they call their mom for counsel, and they call her for, Mom, what are your thoughts on this? And she's honest with them, and she gives them the truth, and she doesn't pull any punches. She lets them know exactly they all know where they stand with her.
Yeah, I definitely have never been the mom that, for example, like we have Avery, our daughter Avery, like she was really tall. Like she's always been really tall. So when she was, third grade, fourth grade, she's playing basketball, and they put her, as post. And I made a joke one day with someone. I was like, well, they have her at post because she's so tall. It's not because she plays basketball so well. And they're like, you're so mean. And I'm like, I'm going to be honest with my kids. My kids are not going to go on America's Got Talent, or they're not going to do this or that.
My mom said,
no, like, I'm going to be honest.
Luke is a very good baseball player.
Because of that really good baseball player.
And with that being said, I don't want to take anything away from Luke and his baseball, but each one of our kids are very good in their chosen, in what they follow. Yeah. So Mackenzie does, and her music is starting to pick back up, but Mackenzie is extremely gifted in music.
She is.
Avery,
she's a singer, songwriter.
That's the truth. When you were talking earlier about you being maybe tone deaf, yeah. Have you ever heard me sing?
No, I don't.
No, it's because I sing so low you can't hear it.
I didn't want to hear it. No, it shouldn't.
No, I although after being married to Farah as long as I have, she will tell you I have gotten better. Okay. But I'm still nowhere near making the stage. So, but yeah.
So Mackenzie's good at music.
Avery
all of our kids can sing.
Avery play instruments. Avery plays
guitar, drums.
She plays all not just guitar, but she plays all the guitars.
Yeah,
from acoustic to electric to bass to. You put a guitar in her hand and she'll have it going. Wow. And we had we had her in lessons for I don't know, maybe 8 months, 9 months, and the instructor came to us and said, look, I can't teach her anymore. She's beyond my...
She's very self-motivated.
Yes. And it's because she would always play.
Wow.
I mean, it was a constant for her. She'd come home from school and she'd pick up a guitar and start playing. Mm. And I'm not saying that the instructor was was not very talented, because he was very gifted, very gifted musician. Mm-hmm. And he just said, look, she's beyond where I'm at.
That's actually good of them. It's not keeping her and
he said I've taken her as far as that, like she wasn't necessarily beyond his expertise.
She knows so much. She was
she was self-motivated, and and that's one thing that I always encourage my kids. Like, I did not want to be the limiter on their life. And so like I would encourage them to go and try things. But also, so like our daughter Ella, she moved to Australia in 2020.
In the middle of a pandemic.
And then the pandemic hit.
Before the pandemic.
Sorry. Yeah. She left January 18th. And then
the world shut down
March,
on the 21st.
You know, and she stayed. And her dad was like, get her home. Like she needs to come
I was
home.
making phone calls. I was trying to figure out how I'm going to get her home.
She cannot stay there. And
she had we called her one day and it was we've got to make this decision, you know, because bringing her home is not a small task, especially in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah. And she actually, what she said that just kind of put everything into perspective. She's like, Dad, I understand where you're at, but understand that God has opened too many doors for me to come over here and then just turn around and come back home. And I'm like, okay, Ella.
And I was 100% like with her all the way. I'm like, babe, if God's called her, you know, like she's got it. And we had always said,
no way. I want her home. This was Dad trying to
protect her. Yeah. But we've always said, like, we would rather have our kids. And there was a missionary friend of ours that said so that we
kind of
didn't come up with this, but we would rather have our kids in the middle of the Amazon River in a leaky boat, surrounded by alligators, in the will of God, than in what people think is the safest city in America, you know,
and being out of the
will of God,
like better than God,
and so we want them pursuing. Like, I don't want them to hold back because mom and dad's not comfortable, or that, you know, we've persuaded them one way or the. I want them to go explore and adventure,
and
try things, and live. Yeah,
that's it. I feel like so many parents struggle with that. Because you still want we're thinking we protect them by keeping them close in that way. But it might not be doing them, you know.
I went to high school with a girl, and this is one of the things, I think this is one of the deals that really kind of changed my whole view on stuff like that. Was I graduated high school with a young lady that she had never been out of the county in Arkansas that we lived in.
Does she have a passport? Probably not.
No. She never, the county, not the country, the county. So for our senior trip, we went to Fort Smith because I graduated high school. I graduated high school in Danville, Arkansas, and we were the home of the Little Johns. Do you know what a Little John is?
No.
Okay. Well, it's a toilet. According to the superintendent, it's a toilet. Stands about that tall.
Home of the Little Johns.
Yeah, but in all actuality, it's actually Danville is on the Petit Jean River.
Okay.
So, but that's what the superintendent told me the first day I went, and he was just having fun with me. But still, nonetheless, it was. But so for our senior trip, we went to Fort Smith. So not only did she get out of the county and go to a big city.
Yeah.
So because Fort Smith is right on the border of Oklahoma, we actually went over the Garrison Bridge and went into Oklahoma so she could say she'd been out of state. We did that on our senior trip.
Where's she now? I hope she's.
I don't know. I really don't keep track or keep tabs with a lot of the guys from where I graduated. Yeah, it's kind of sad because I actually keep better tabs with guys I went to high school with up in Kansas. And it's for no reason than that's just.
Well, you were only there 2 years.
Yeah. You were in the Navy, right? Air Force, sorry.
No, not the
Navy,
Air Force.
Navy,
Don't
Navy and Army?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't you put me in the Air Force.
That is trying in the Air Force.
I know.
That was her decision. You think I'm going to take it easy on her?
How many years were you?
So I was in the Naval Reserve for 8 years.
Okay.
And then I was in the Army Reserve for 3 years.
Which one was easier? Easier, relatively speaking.
Well, I wouldn't say easier. I would say that the Navy Reserve was a better organization. So where the Army Reserve, the unit I was with, and I'm not going to say the unit, but the unit I was with, it was actually a special operations unit that was,
Issues with communication or flowing well?
No, so when I showed up, I was there. So my first weekend there, I showed up and they're like, oh yeah, just get ready because we're going to the field. Well, I'm used to going to the field with marching to the field, just hiking 10 miles into the field and doing our thing for the weekend and with all of our gear.
Yeah.
We carry everything in, carry everything out.
Yeah.
And when they said, hey, we're going to the field this weekend, I'm like, all right, cool. So I came in ready to go. I had everything stripped down, ready to go. And, I remember going to my platoon leader and he's like, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's my gear, and so I put it in the Humvee and he's like, oh no, that's not how we go to the field. I'm like,
how do you go to the
okay. So he backs the Humvee up to his personal vehicle and he starts throwing in a personal cooler, personal lawn chairs. And I'm like, wait a minute. And so we go to the field and I'm like, it was like a bunch of guys going to camp. So going to deer camp or something like that. I'm like, man.
Favorite place compared to the Navy, probably Navy.
No, because we weren't going to the field to play. We were going to the field to prepare for battle.
Yeah.
And that was
practice
to practice the fight. And as things went on, so the next weekend they came to me and said, hey, you want to do the Soldier of the Year competition? I'm like,
I just started.
I just joined the Army. I don't know anything about the Army. And they're like, well, you're squared away and you're probably the most fit guy in the unit. So why don't you just go now? I'm like, okay.
So you just signed up?
And so they came and they gave me about 8 books that stacked about that tall. And I'm not a reader. I'm not. And that's one, if I could change anything about me, that's what I would change is that I would read more. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, you've got 2 months. I'm like, oh, well, fast forward 2 months and I didn't really read a whole lot. But one of the things that they promised me is when I came over to the air, if I did this, then they would give me a promotion.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay. So I end up going, we do the physical fitness part. Mm-hmm. Then we do our combat readiness and there's about 8 different aspects. Mm-hmm. I was actually the first guy. What?
Nothing.
What?
She's just gazing at you lovingly.
No, she's not. She's whispering in my ear. Oh, anyway. So we go through everything. We go through everything. And when we're done and we're going into the interview part, I was second. I was sitting second in the competition of about 10 guys.
Wow.
And
you didn't do a lot of reading.
No. So we were going into the interview part and I knew that if I didn't know the information that I don't have that information. Yeah. And so they asked me several different questions. And one of the questions that the command sergeant major asked me, he's like, other than your ribbons, what's wrong with your uniform? Mm-hmm. And I looked and I said, I'm sorry, Sergeant Major, there's nothing wrong with my uniform. He said, well, your ribbons, they're not on you don't have them in your packet. I said, well, Sergeant Major, I've got them in my packet that's in my vehicle. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll go get them. He's like, you've got 2 minutes. I ran out to my vehicle, grabbed my packet, brought it back in, gave it to him. He opened up, and this was my Navy records. And he opened them up. He's like, okay, why are these records not in here? I said, I don't know, Sergeant Major. They were given to my chain of command to make sure they were in here. Mm. And he just kind of looks over at my first sergeant. And then he sits back up and he's like, okay, other than that, what's wrong with your uniform? And there was nothing wrong with my uniform. And so anyway, that kind of raised a flag. She's laughing at me because I'm going too far into detail. Oh. But so at the end of the deal, that was also my promotion board.
Wow.
And everybody, so that there was the command sergeant major, the command first sergeant, and then there were 5 other first sergeants on the panel. And so to make 7. And so everybody on that board wanted me promoted except one person. And that was my command first sergeant.
The one you worked directly with?
The one, yes.
The one that told you to go read those books?
Yes. And because that one didn't want me, because he was my first sergeant, I didn't get promoted.
Because I think he would know you better, right?
Well, none of them knew me.
What was his reason for doing that?
Because I didn't win.
Because you came second.
Because I came second.
But he said to just participate.
So the next month, I actually went to my commanding officer and I told him, I said, I'm done. I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not playing the game. And that commanding officer talked me into going to Germany with him. Basically said, you're going to Germany with me. And so I went.
And this was BF, right? Before Farah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it wasn't. It was after Farah. Yeah, it was after Farah. Yeah, we were married. Yeah, it was after Farah. No, she didn't go. Yeah, because I remember being over there and I'm like, I want to bring her with me. Mm-hmm. So that was so many years ago, but I want to bring her back. But, and so I went over there and did that and then came back. He's like, okay, now you're going to Killeen, Texas with me. I'm like, I'm done. He's like, no, just come down here and do this. And so in both of those, I earned some medals that were not given away very easily.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And I earned those. And he tried to talk me into it, and I just couldn't do it.
And that's how you entered them.
Yeah, he switched to Army because he could drill in Fayetteville, and it was only a 45-minute drive as opposed to a 2.5 hour.
But he loved the Navy more. So he sacrificed that for the family.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he really loved with the Marine because he was a corpsman.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I was there by
so that's what he loved so much about it.
And I think that what made that switch was there were too many times that I'd be driving home from drill after being exhausted, and I'd fall asleep just outside of Little Rock, and I'd wake up just before I got off the interstate.
Like you wouldn't remember.
And I wouldn't remember the whole drive.
Yeah.
And you were driving?
Oh, yeah. And I'd make it home at the right amount of time. So I was doing 70, 75 miles an hour the whole time.
You never got into an accident just closing your eyes driving?
I didn't close my eyes. That's just it. It was kind of like, it was just like my body was,
But he did it for us. One fun story, when he was still with the Navy, he went to drill weekend, and this just speaks to the kind of dad that he is. The girls, Mackenzie and Gates, he had let them paint his toenails pink, and he did not take it off for drill weekend. And so they go out and do their ruck march, and they come in and they're taking showers, and some of the guys are like, Doc, is there something you're going to tell us?
Doc, is there something you need to tell us? Because here I am, pink toenails in the shower, and I'm just like, no, I'm a girl dad. Yeah. That's it. I've got 2 little girls, and they had their way with dad's toes. So, and
did you have any? I mean, the common things we hear about when people leave their military careers, PTSD and all that. Did you have any blowback from that?
No.
Why do you think it made you different from that?
Well, first of all, I wasn't in any direct combat.
All right,
so I didn't have rounds coming down at me.
Okay.
So that's.
Well, I bet you saw some really, really horrible stuff as well. Yeah.
So I did see some when I first got in, and I was doing some stuff in Portsmouth Hospital. I remember my first day on the job. I had a guy die on me, actually, and he that stuck with me. But it's like that's all. Dying is all part of life.
Yeah.
We're all appointed a time, and I don't know when my time is, but I couldn't. It was that guy's time. It was his day. Mm-hmm. So, and then I also saw, I saw a guy in the morgue that, it was pretty brutal, and I'll share that with you off
camera.
But for the most part, he didn't see a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, And it's like Farah and I have talked about this several times, that I'll be driving down the road and I'll come up on an accident and end up pulling people from a rolled over car, or and it's just
like literally right over here around the corner, we have a regional park, and we're out playing softball one day. And when it ended that Sunday afternoon, like all of a sudden we hear gunshots, and like
he ran towards it,
and he ran and he saved the woman's life. Like the medics, the paramedics were like, if you had not known how to respond to this and care for her, she may have died.
Gunshot.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody shot her
twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they pulled up beside her, and it was a drive-by.
It was a drive-by.
No, I don't know. We don't know.
Wow.
So, but they shot her once in the face and once in the chest.
How's she doing now?
I don't know.
It just
It was just I just went in to do what I did do, and they ingrain it and they drill it into you, and it's just a reaction. Mm-hmm. It's not I don't think about it. I don't think about, oh, well, I could get shot or anything like that. It's just.
So the joke around our house when anyone was sick, when our kids were little, he would be like, just let me give you an IV. Because we used to have IV bags.
Yeah,
there was one. So it's funny because when Farah was really sick, that she talked about that week, she was really sick. That's the first thing I wanted to do was give her an IV. And she wouldn't let me give her an IV. And so we ended up going to the hospital. So we go, so we go to the hospital. What's the first thing they do?
The drip.
They gave her the drip, and she's like, I feel so
it didn't
much better.
Solve the issue, though.
No, it didn't solve the issue, but it was like, I feel so much better. And it's like, well, if so that's where it all came from. Is like, let me give you an IV.
Yeah.
So,
I see. So now for men who might be struggling in just, like you talked about vulnerability, and even for fathers who might be coming into a situation where they're, blended family and kids, what are some tips you have for one, maximizing your masculinity while at the same time giving room for express emotions without bottling everything in? And then two, as a father and a husband coming into a blended situation, what are some tips from a male's perspective that they could use?
As far as, we're all given emotion. The only
emotionless person is a dead person, right?
Yeah. We're all, crying is not a sign of weakness. If that is in your mind that crying is a sign of weakness, you need to change that perspective. Because I find that there are times where I have to let my emotion out, and I don't care who sees it. All of my kids have seen me cry. There have been people, if you would have looked over there a little while ago, you'd have seen me crying.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Just
focusing on a beautiful wife.
Just thinking about our history. We sit down and we talk about it every now and then, and it's just like, oh my goodness, that was such a pivotal point in our marriage, such a pivotal point in our lives, and it just tears start flowing. And so don't be afraid to express your emotion. And my emotion towards her, that's another thing that. I'm not gonna hold my love in for her. I don't care who's around or what. They're gonna know that there's a ring on her finger.
And I put it there.
And there's a reason I put it there. It's because I love her. I will protect her. I will cherish her till death do us part.
They're bound together by that ring.
We are. And so, so that's kind of ingrained in me. And I know it's ingrained in her too. And so she just she accepts me for who I am. And so she'll accept my affection no matter where we're at. So,
even though she might not be the one initiating it all the time, because I didn't do PDF very well.
Yeah.
But even our girls will say, they have verbalized the fact that, in selecting their spouses or, I want someone like you, Dad.
That's good. That's a hallmark of being a good parent, right there. When your kids say that to you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you guys are raised good kids, and your kids is so well, mannered, and I'm talking about them as if they're like in their 10s or 12s. But I love your kids. They have a heart for people. You can tell.
Thank you.
It's a Luke came to my house for Christmas, and he was. The minority, then I use that word. He just fit right in.
Oh, he loved it.
Like, where's that guy? Oh, he's my brother. Like, his family. Oh, that makes sense. He just.
Oh, his favorite part of it, he talked about at the end when they were getting rice to take home, and the big ice chest. Yeah. And he was like, they said, he's even more of a Nigerian than we are.
Go to Jollof plantains. Yeah. You love great kids.
Every moment of
it. Yeah.
But as far as any kind of advice going into a blended family, you have to agree to disagree. And then two, you have to be willing to communicate. That's if I could go back and change anything about our relationship early on, it's that we could communicate better and that we would learn how to fight better. Because we're always going to argue. We're always going to have disagreements. But if we could have done it better, I think that's probably, and know that there's differences that there's a lot of people that get married a little bit later on. So the kids are a little bit older. Well, you can't go in and change those kids, whether they're 10, 12, 14 years old, or even 8, 6 or 8, because they've had an upbringing and there have been things that have been ingrained in them already. And you're not going to go in there and change things in the first month, and they're not going to care what you say. They're going to care what you do. They're going to watch you more than they're going to listen to you. And if they see you yelling like Mackenzie, if she saw me yelling at Farah all the time and being mean and ugly and just to Farah all the time, then anything I say to her is not going to really matter. But when they see me love their mom, and when they see me listen and take heart what she says, then that kind of opens the door and be willing to show compassion, be willing to show emotion to the kids. So
I think the one thing that I would want to reiterate was what my mom did, what she practiced. Like, even if you don't care to be around your, ex, like, that is their parent, and they need that parent, and they need that relationship, even if that individual is unhealthy, and you may have to put boundaries, around that, because I realize that there are some unsafe situations, but they still need an awareness, and need to have some kind of relationship, because that is their parent, your kid's parent. And so do what you can to humble yourself and help them to be able to have that connection, even with boundaries, if that's what has to be the case. Because I'm not saying put them in an unsafe situation.
You have to be very
be wise, but don't be diminishing. Don't put down that other individual just because you had a problem with them, because you're bitter towards them, or you don't care for them.
Sorry, and I know I'm cutting you off, but and I don't mean to, but that's one thing that really inspired me about my dad. I got to know my dad after I was 30. I think I was about 32 or 33. Not really. And there's a long backstory that I won't go into, but I went out to meet with him in Reno, Nevada, and he gave me as much time as I wanted, just him and I. He sent everybody in his family away, his wife and my half siblings. And we just sat and we talked, and he answered every question that I had. And, he had every opportunity to say anything he wanted to about my mom. And he didn't. And that has spoke volume. What he did say, he said one thing about my mom, and he said that
something about your mom.
Yeah, he said, isn't that what I said?
You said what?
No, anyway, he said, your mom has done a great job raising you kids. And that has rung with me, for those almost 20 years now.
Wow.
That spoke volumes.
He grew up having a very different picture about the kind of person that his dad.
Did your mom say some things about him around you?
Yeah. She said some things around us. There was a couple things she said directly to us, but there were things that that were indirectly said, but loud enough for us to hear it. And so I grew up with a different picture of my dad. And when I was able to go out and visit with him, I got a completely different picture of him.
Yeah.
So, and so that spoke volumes.
How about in cases where the kid's involved and then the other parent uses that kid as a pawn to kind of like separate the new home?
I don't put up with that junk.
How do you, because I have a friend who's currently going through that now. The son is caught in the middle of divorced parents, and the father uses that as a pawn against her.
What's his name? I'll call him.
No.
Oh my goodness.
So, no, it's
that's very difficult. Because all that you're doing in that moment, Your child already has the trauma of being from a broken home, even though it is very commonplace, whether you're in the church or outside of the church.
Yeah.
Sadly enough, it is commonplace, but it is traumatic for our kids, for the kids that come from a broken home. And then whichever parent, and sometimes it's both parents, using the children as pawns, you are just adding to their trauma.
Yeah.
That's very unhealthy, and it is a very immature approach.
Yeah. And one thing I would say to your friend is just keep loving your son. Love him as best as you can, and do your best, do your absolute best not to engage in that kind of conversation. You know, if it's, well, dad said this and dad said that, I'm sorry, he said that. And you don't have to defend yourself to every accusation, and you don't have to engage in every argument. And that's what I would say is if it's something that is extremely detrimental, then defend yourself and let your kid know, as long as you've got the proof. But if it's something that it's just like, well, dad says this and dad says that, I'm sorry, he says that.
And it's hard to be patient and to endure.
Yeah.
Long term. We definitely journeyed through that.
But I knew that God was bigger than the situation. I knew that God was still on the throne. Nothing about that situation made him even flinch. And as long as I remained true to my faith, true to my family.
You also estranged from your daughter for a while. Is that period as well? How many years is it?
So she was 12 and she reached out. She was 19 or 20.
Oh, 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
And you had her from,
it was like,
for the previous 12 years, you had her with you?
No. So we had visitation.
Okay, so
we had visitation.
And then 2 weeks out of the summer. And sometimes it was a little more, sometimes it was a little less.
I see.
But yeah, so she,
So for 7 years, you never heard from her?
Well, yeah, we did. Not from lack of trying, but yeah, we didn't.
It was closed doors. Wow.
Yeah. So he went to, he and a couple of our kids went to her and watched her high school graduation, but they didn't get an invitation. He got he just called the school to find out the information because he knew
she was graduating. And that's my daughter.
Yeah. And he was like, I want to be there, and the day will come where we will be reunited, and I want to be able to say, I was there.
Yep. And I did. There were some harsh things that were said following that, but I mean, that's all.
She saw you on the day?
No. But I reached out to her and said, hey, that was, your graduation was very nice. It was, congratulations. And I got a nasty gram back, but she was being deceived at the time, and and now she's, of course she's come back around, and she's got one of our grandkids, and so there's a relationship. So
and 7 years, that's a long time.
It is a long time.
How was he like during that time? He was
it was, like it was hard. Like I think that reality was he went through moments of depression. He was very withdrawn, so he didn't talk about it a lot. It was really painful. And it was painful for us too.
Because you had a family dynamic already.
Yeah. And so, it was hard on the whole family, and the reality is, like, we are so grateful, that we prayed and believed God for revival and even sowed seed into other families for our miracle of that relationship being restored. But,
and in that sowing of the seed for the restoration of our family was when Josh came. So we sowed a seed for restoration in our family in our finite minds, we're sitting here thinking about Gates.
Yeah.
But
Josh came.
Here comes Josh.
Yeah.
17.
Like literally 2 weeks after we did, like, I know some people would be like, what do you mean by sowing a seed? But like we gave a gift at church, like a financial, gift. And we actually wrote on there that this is for the restoration
of our lives,
of our family. Mm-hmm. And we had Gates, like he said, we had Gates in our mind. And literally 2 weeks later, I didn't know at the time, but he got the phone call from Josh's.
How did he find out about you? What was his mom saying about you?
Well, so he'd known about me for several years, since he was, I don't know, probably 6, 8 years old, 7 years old. So the mom
could have contacted you easily.
I don't know that it was easily, because remember, this is back before Google. This is back before. She did, and that's a whole nother story that we'll talk about later. But yeah, so she had the idea, and they found. Josh always wanted to. Every year, his mom would tell him, hey, we'll do it on your birthday next year. Let's wait another year. Let's wait another year. And finally, when he turned 17, he's like, no, you're gonna. I found my dad on Facebook, and either you can. Yeah,
he had a name.
He had a name, but he didn't. And so he said, look, either you're going to do it or I'm going to.
So he was sifting through because your name is, there's not going to be many Tony Styles, but right. I imagine there were so many entries. How did he know it was you in particular? Or he just sent all of them a message?
There's no doubt.
He didn't reach out.
He didn't reach out to me.
It was his adoptive father.
It was his adopted dad that called me.
So they were like, they got involved.
I'd gotten like 3 or 4 Facebook requests from Josh's mom.
Okay.
And I asked Farah a couple times, I'm like, do you know who this is? Because she keeps trying to request me. And I'm like, I'm not, I'm not going to
spend the night together. I don't even remember her name. That was BC before Christ, right?
No. Well, it was BC.
Yes. Okay.
But here's the deal. It wasn't the name that I knew her by.
Oh, maybe she just had
because she took her married name. Yes. Yes. And so, and I wasn't going to go.
So, wait, are we expecting more phone calls? That's what you are, the father.
They better not be. There better not be. If there is, I don't remember the night. I can just say no. Anyway, so she, I got several Facebook friend requests from her, and I didn't recognize the name. Mm-hmm. And so, and I asked her, I said, hey, do you know who this is? She's like, no. And so I would decline.
And you had mutual friends, so that's why you declined. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, and then one day I get this phone call, and it's like, hey, is this Tony Stout? I'm like, yeah, it is. And we were doing stuff around the house, and I was busy, and he's like, well, are you sitting down? I'm like, no, I'm working. And he's like, well, and he gave me his name, and he said, I'm Josh Combs' adopted dad. I'm like, okay, I don't, he's like, Josh is your son from when you were dating so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, hang on, let me sit down.
How long ago was this?
Well, that's when Josh was 17.
Wow.
So it was his senior year of high school.
Wow.
And so I sit down 30? And we talk. Yeah. And Josh was, so he turns 31 next month.
Wow.
So I sat down and we talked for a few minutes, and I talked to him for a couple times throughout. And finally I got to the point where I was like, do you mind if I call him and visit with him? He's like, no, not at all. And so, it wasn't 2 minutes later, Josh called me. And so we talked for a few minutes, and all this time she still didn't know. It took me a month to tell her.
Why? Were you worried? Or just was trying to process?
I had to process. And that's one thing she'll tell you is that there are times that I will just completely shut down and I've got to process stuff.
Yeah.
We had one of those days the other day. So, no, it wasn't a wise decision on my end. So, yeah. So anyway, so fast forward a month, and I'd become friends with Josh on Facebook.
Mm.
And so fast forward a month, and the computer's sitting right in there, kind of like it is right now, except there's just one monitor. And I took her in there and I said, here, I want to show you something. So I pull them up on Facebook and I start showing some pictures, and she's sitting on my lap. She looks at me. She's like, why are you showing me pictures of you in high school with your old girlfriends?
Yeah.
And I'm like, babe, this is not me. This is my son, Josh. And it was like,
I literally gasped.
She lost her breath for a second.
Like,
yeah, it was like, because there's no doubt, Josh looks just like me. Looks
and then I immediately thought back to that conversation that night in our home in Arkansas after we got home from church. I told that story earlier that where he was crying, and he had been told that there had been an abortion, but he felt like he was out there somewhere in the world. Wow. Like that's immediately.
So you felt there was something out there. Oh, you just couldn't connect.
So we worked it out to where we went and met him. Christmas.
Right after Christmas.
Was it very awkward the first time?
Oh my gosh, no, not at all. I mean, we get out of the vehicles and he just runs and just jumps on me.
Yes,
and just embrace, just an embrace.
It was like 1:30, 2:30 in the morning when we got.
Yeah, we drove. We made a 12-hour drive in 10 hours.
And his parents were there. Mm-hmm. His mom and adoptive dad, like they were there, and they met us in the parking lot at the hotel, and then we all drove and went to IHOP in the middle of the night.
247 IHOP, yeah,
and had food. And so then we're like, okay, well, we're gonna go back to our hotel. And he was like, I'm staying with you, and I'm like, we have one room, like.
With, there's 2 beds, but 1 room.
But I'm like, this is our kid, but doesn't really. Yeah.
This is a young man. I mean, he was a young man.
Yes. And like, literally, he stayed. And literally, the minute the hotel door closed, he tackles him and takes him to the floor. And you know how you see like fathers and sons wrestling and stuff? They did that.
Oh.
It was like a 3-minute wrestling match, and I'm filming.
I had to put him in his place.
Animals in the wild.
Yeah. And he is just like,
he was a little kid at the candy store.
That was you.
He had longed for that day for years. He said
it was a beautiful thing to.
How's your relationship with him now?
It's good. We talk on not every day.
Yeah.
I mean,
talk on a regular basis.
I wish we lived close.
Right.
I do.
So in Arkansas?
No, he lives in just outside of Mobile, Alabama.
Okay.
He's married to Rachel, and they've got 3 kids.
So they're a blended family.
They're a blended family as well, but they've got one on the way.
Yeah,
that better be a little girl.
Why?
Because if not, we're sending her back.
No, that's not true.
That's what I told her, but it was all in good fun. So
does it have 2 boys?
So he's got 3. So he's got 2 from his previous marriage, and he's got Benji with Rachel.
Okay.
And
are they all boys?
Yes.
Oh, so that's why you want to.
Yeah. So we got Bradley and Noah.
And you have a grandson as well. Another grandson.
Yeah,
that's Arthur.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Just learned to walk.
Oh, watch out for that.
He did.
We got video. He's 10 months old and just learned to walk.
Wow.
And he's such a big boy.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He's 10 months old, wearing 2 teeth clothes and almost out of them.
He's a little giant.
He's a little giant.
That's good. He's amazing. Like he's so smart.
They're all smarty bitches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bradley and Noah are extremely compassionate.
Yeah.
Benji is.
He's a little firecracker.
He's a firecracker. Yeah, he is. He's ornery.
He's so fun.
Yeah.
You guys are so blessed. I mean, just sitting here and hearing more about it. I mean, I felt like I knew some bits about you, but all the stories and the behind the scenes.
You've heard a lot this afternoon.
Yeah, I feel like I just want to keep hearing more and more.
Oh, we could write a book.
You should write a book.
We could, and it's
you as well, especially you and all of your escapades. BCE.
Careful.
Oh, sorry. You need to be in a book so that you can show people the measure of salvation. That is hope, right?
Yes.
That's the angle I'm coming at. Not just for you to talk about your BC days, but that Jesus has paid all of it.
Jesus paid it all.
Yeah.
If he can come,
and I'm a new creation.
Yeah, that's it. Yay.
If he can love me, then he can love anybody.
That was the point I was going for.
Yeah,
I mean, like every one of us will have.
And my testimony is not the testimony of, I was strung out on drugs, I was strung out on alcohol, I was a womanizer, I was all this, that, and everything else. I considered myself a good person. I did. And but God met me where I needed him the most on the day that I needed him the most.
At the moment too.
And there was no judgment. There was no, well, you got to change this. It was just like a father welcoming his son home and loving me. And he's loved me ever since. And even in my failures, because I've had my share of them. And, yeah. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a lovely episode, and I'm going to have to break this into 2 parts.
I'm like,
yeah, no, but I just want to stop
you.
I don't want to stop it. This is exploratory, and I didn't want to just stop it because we had good questions and the good responses, and then a lot of the probing for more stuff. And then Tony joined,
and just understand that this is just the tip of the iceberg,
right?
Oh, so if you take that iceberg and you flip it over, there's so much more in there.
What is so fun is to watch the two of you when y'all get together. Like, really? I love the moments when we over dinner.
Yeah.
And to see the two of you. Yeah. Because y'all can talk for hours.
I have the gift of gab.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. So do you. Oh, wait. So sorry.
And that was it, guys. It's been such a fun time with the Stouts on their couch and learning more about their story. And where can people find you, Farah? Don't find her. She doesn't want to be found. You're going to scare the introvert this way. But you can learn more about our church, not the church.
Yes.
And
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, Tony's Farah. I'm not on social media
not much,
very much anymore. I used to be on there.
She posts about her people she does life with, like her choir people, her church members, and then her kids, and her spouse as well. But you can follow their adventures on there. And if you're ever in Oklahoma, come worship with us at No Church.
Please do.
Yes.
Able to see Farah love on you in the lobby afterwards, or even hear her sing with her mellifluous voice. Thank you for doing me the honors of sharing your story to the world.
Thank you for allowing us to share life with you.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
We love it.
Pleasure. All right, guys. Catch you guys on another episode of the Sibyl podcast. I remain your host.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
And that wraps up today's recap of our conversation with Farah and Tony. Their journey continues to unfold, revealing strength, love, and resilience in the face of adversity. If you haven't already, make sure to listen to the first part of our conversation to fully grasp the depth of their story. Join us next time as we explore even more aspects of our guests, including other valuable lessons that they've learned along the way. Stay tuned for another captivating episode of the Sibyl podcast. I remain your host, Sibyl. Love you guys, and bye for now.